Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nagda Samant Roy, and I'm a clinical psychologist. Before I start with the session, I want to tell you about a number which holds some significance 450. But yes, I'll not tell you what significance this number holds. It is for you to pick out and let me know in the comment section below that what significance do you think this number holds. I repeat the number once again, 450. So the people who are joining in, let me tell you that this session, Mental Wellbeing at Workplace, is brought to you by Chola MS in collaboration with MFine. And why we are here? We're here because in the recent times we've seen that the change in workplace scenario, the change in the styles of working have actually brought up a lot of stress, right? We are just clueless as to how to cope up with the recent changes that have taken place, how to excel, how to do our best as we used to do earlier. And that's what brings us here discussing about workplace stress. To begin with, let us just talk about what are some of the common mental health issues that we see at workplace. Some of the common mental health issues that we see at workplace are stress. We all know, we all have heard about stress. But what is stress? What exactly happens in stress? When you're stressed, you see that your performance is not as it used to be earlier. The same amount of work seems unmanageable now. The same amount of tasks seems a big mountain to you. You see that you face difficulties in your sleep. You face difficulties, in your appetite. There are changes in your appetite. You notice some behavioral changes like you're irritable and you just don't want to be with people. You want to be aloof. These are some of the changes that you notice when you're stressed. Now, rest all of the mental health disorders actually begin from a state of stress. Stress when unnoticed. Stressed when unidentified leads to mental health disorders. So what are some of the common mental health disorders that we generally see at workplace? Please remember, we're not talking about the entire spectrum of mental health disorders, but we are talking about some of the common mental health disorders that we notice generally at workplace. The first being anxiety. In anxiety, it is often seen. Basically, what is anxiety? Anxiety is a fear, extreme fear, apprehension, which is often accompanied by physical symptoms like heart racing faster, shivering sensation in the body, tingling sensation in the body, dryness of throat and mouth, sweating, nausea, feeling giddy, feeling dizzy. When you are anxious before the presentation, how do you feel? And now just multiply it with 100 times. That's what happens when people face anxiety disorders. This other kind of disorders that we see is very common and you must be knowing. It's depression. And we generally see that we use, oh, I'm so depressed. We commonly use the word depressed very lightly. But trust me, depression is a very clinical term. When depression takes place, there is significant disturbance in sleep and appetite. The person withdraws from social interaction. The person goes through extreme loss of self-esteem and confidence, feels hopeless about the future. Sometimes thoughts of self-harm are also present. The person is unable to see the good in anything, unable to enjoy or have pleasure in the pleasurable activities which he used to enjoy earlier. Now let me tell you about another form of mental health issue that we commonly see, and that's insomnia. You could have, you would be knowing that recently during the times there was a new form of insomnia which many people used to call as COVID-somnia. So the sleeplessness because of the lifestyle changes that COVID brought about. So in insomnia, we basically see sleep disturbances. Either the person oversleeps or the person undersleeps. The other kind of disorders that we see at workplace are known as adjustment disorders. That is when certain changes in our life have taken place and of which are not very pleasant. For example, certain changes like a relocation of workplace. Relocation, going to a different team, having a different supervisor, having different colleagues you're not used to. So a lot of times it is seen that people show adjustment disorders when situations are not very pleasant for them. And what happens in adjustment disorders? Some people show pure signs of anxiety. Some people show pure signs of depression, and some people show a mixed sign of anxiety and depression. So while we have understood what are some of the common mental health issues that could reflect at workplace, let's just understand why these mental health issues take place. Why a person gets stressed. A person may get stressed, so according to research, some of the primary reasons why a person may get stressed at workplace is low salary, when a person is not able to see any kind of promotion or growth in the organization, when there are rifts, or let's say when there are some kind of disagreements among the colleagues or with the superiors. Yeah, when a person has no say, they feel helpless, they feel like nobody understands them. When they are not able to explain their point of view, they feel powerless. Yeah, and also when they don't want to relocate to a place, but they have to relocate because their job demands that. So these are some of the common reasons that lead to stress, and stress in turn leads to mental health disorders. So now, one of the common things that I get generally during my practice is how to deal with a difficult situation at workplace, or especially with a difficult superior. How to deal with them. Here are some common things that I would like to tell you, and these simple things will make your question or your problem little more simpler. Yeah. So identify their working styles. Whenever you face a difficult workplace challenge, or let's say a difficult superior you're having difficulty getting along with, identify their working styles, communicate them to understand what their expectations are. Yeah. Next, keep them in loop. No matter whatever mails you send, no matter whatever communication you're doing with other groups, other departments, make sure you keep them in the loop. Yeah. Then make sure you take criticisms constructively. If there is something coming up, don't let that attack your self-esteem. Don't let that attack your confidence. Don't start thinking that I'm not good enough or I'm being attacked. Don't personify or personalize whatever is being projected at you. Take criticism constructively. Now, how do you take criticisms constructively? You take criticisms constructively by sitting down with yourself and asking yourself one simple question. Is this something that I'm lacking? Is this something that I can do about? Is this something that I also feel like, okay, I didn't do it correctly? When the answer is yes, then do. Make steps. Make steps for amends. Make steps of what you can do to bring that thing which was told that is lacking in you. And then, despite giving you 100%, if you see that you feel attacked, you feel you're being criticized, it's okay. It's okay. Then it is time to make amends, either within you or outside. It's time to make amends. But it's a good idea to understand, because difficulty at workplace, if it doesn't add to your technical skills or your working skills at all, it leaves you with some important life lessons, which are very important and which you will not learn until and unless you face difficult people at work. I'm sure a lot of you are waiting to, hear from me what is that number 450, right? So number 450 is 450 million. 450 million is the total number of mental health cases across the world. You see how common it is? And it is even way, way higher than the total number of COVID-19 cases across the globe. So it's very common, yet a lot of people are not aware about this. And that's why we are today on this platform to help you march towards awareness and understand how you manage your mental health. Before I proceed to the next part where I tell you how you manage your mental health, let me give you one more number. 16. 16. Make a note of it. I'll tell you at the end what 16 means. So let's just start talking about how do you manage your mental health at workplace. The first step to managing your mental health. Forget about workplace. I'm sure that in relationships also people face difficulty, right? So it's important that you strengthen your mental muscles. Yeah, we go to gym, we strengthen our muscles, the physical muscles, the muscles of the body. But what about our mental muscles? So there are certain things which I'm going to talk to you today which will help strengthen your mental muscles. The first, relaxation techniques. Make sure that you daily practice either guided meditative relaxation techniques or relaxation techniques that are self-induced. Because when you practice relaxation techniques, they help generate alpha waves in your brain. Our brain has different kind of waves: alpha, beta, theta, gamma and delta, right? Out of which alpha waves are the waves which are known to induce a state of relaxation. And with alpha waves, you get proper sleep, your anxiety is reduced, your anger is reduced, you're able to concentrate and focus. And at the same time, with alpha waves, with a calm head, you're able to solve the problem at hand. So make sure include some or the other form of relaxation technique in your daily schedule, and most preferably twice a day. Once before you go to sleep, once when you wake up in the morning. So that when you go to sleep, you flush out all the negative emotions for that day. And when you begin your day, when you practice, you start it with a more positive and a more calm note so that you can face whatever is waiting ahead for you on that day. Now, next is very important, and that is lifestyle modification techniques. So when we talk about lifestyle modification techniques, it's very important. While the relaxation techniques build your mental muscles, the lifestyle modification techniques will build your physical muscles. Now you will tell me, why am I talking about physical muscles here when I'm actually delivering a talk on mind, right? Because mind and body are intricately related. They're closely bonded, right? So if something goes wrong with your body, your mind is affected. Something goes wrong with your mind, your body is affected. Hence, it's also very, very important that your body is taken care of. And the lifestyle modification techniques help you take care of your body. So what are these techniques? They are based on 3 premises: sleep, diet, and exercise. It's very important that your sleep is regularized. There are 5 principles of sleep hygiene techniques which is very important for you to understand. First, a fixed time to bed and a fixed time to wake up. No gadgets. Have your dinner 3.5 hours before your sleep time. No afternoon nap. No tea, alcohol, or smoke or coffee after 6 p.m. in the evening. These are the 5 simple sleep hygiene techniques that you need to follow so that you can regularize your sleep. What about diet? When it comes to diet, it is very important for you to remember 3 important things: quality, quantity, and time. When it comes to time, make sure that your breakfast is done by 9:30, lunch 1 to 2, and dinner by 7:30 to 8 o'clock. Quality, try to take, if you want to go out, have some rich food or order something, make sure you do it during the daytime, but not at night time, because at night time your body's metabolism is at its slowest. So you will have, if you take rich food, you will have problems related to digestion, acidity, and these in turn will impact your sleep, and sleep in turn will impact your mental health. So it's very important that whatever rich food or whatever you want to consume is taken during the daytime. And quantity. When it comes to quantity, just remember a simple ratio: 3 hours to 2 hours to 1. If 3 parts in the morning, 2 parts in the afternoon, and 1 part in the dinner. The dinner should be the lightest meal of the day, rich in fiber. Now when it comes to exercise, of course the secondary effect of exercise will be you look good, you look smart, you look healthy, right? But why I want to mention about exercise is because when you exercise, your body releases a chemical known as endorphins. Endorphins are your natural chemicals that boost your mood, uplift your mind. You feel more optimistic, you feel more positive. All you out there who would be regularly exercising, you will get to know when you exercise, just post exercise, you feel really good, no matter what you're worried about. But after exercise, you really feel fresh, energetic, enthusiastic. right? And that is no magic. It's only because of the endorphins being released in your body when you exercise. Now, what are the other things that you can do to ensure that you manage stress at work? Plan your day. Start your day 10 minutes before, 10 minutes before your usual time. And take that 10 minutes to just plan what are the agendas that you want to achieve on that day. Trust me, if out of 10 agenda, if you're not able to achieve 10, but at least you will be able to achieve 6 or 7. And that's more than enough, which otherwise doesn't happen on normal days, right? So it's a good idea to start your day with a planning. It's very important that you manage time well. Yeah. So we see that at workplace, a common thing that we face is procrastination. If you think that there are certain deadlines you are supposed to meet and you have not met yet, and there are certain things to be submitted for that particular day as well, so keep out 1 hour extra to meet the pending tasks, the procrastinated tasks. Like this, every day when you meet the deadline of the day, plus take out 1 hour extra to meet the pending task, eventually with the point of time, your tasks will get completed. And you will see that you're marching more towards a stress-free state at your work. So while these are some of the things that you can do for yourself when you're stressed at work, let's understand how do you identify. This is a very common question that I often receive, that how do I identify that I have a problem? I mean, I'm not in the right, mental health state. So there are 3 important parameters which I'll tell you right now, which will help you identify whether you are stressed or whether you are going through any kind of mental health related issues or not. The first is sleep. Whenever you see that within a period of 2 weeks, your sleep is disturbed from your normal pattern. So continuously for a period of 2 weeks, your sleep is disturbed from the normal pattern. So either you're oversleeping or you're undersleeping, or no matter how much you sleep, you feel tired and fatigued. That is the first red flag. What is the second red flag? The second red flag is when it comes to appetite. When you see that consistently over a period of, 2 weeks, your appetite has been disturbed. It's not like your normal appetite. Either you're overeating or you're undereating, or there is a disturbance in your normal pattern of appetite. That's the second red flag. And the third is when you see that there are certain behavior changes that you are encountering. Either you yourself feel that my behavior is not like earlier, or you feel like, or there are people around you who tell you that, you're not like, your behavior is not at earlier, you're getting very irritable. When people point it out to you, either your friends or family members, that's the third red flag. So when all these changes, the changes in sleep, the changes in appetite, the changes in behavior, you see that they are persistently taking place over a period of 2 weeks, perhaps it's time for you to take notice and reach out to whom? So that brings me to the next section. Who do you, when you identify that you are facing certain significant issues and you're not feeling like your normal self, that's when you reach out for help. And who do you reach out to for help? So there are psychiatrists, there are mental health professionals who are psychiatrists or clinical psychologists or counselors. Now you will tell me, what is the difference between 3 of them? They all sound similar and they all sound confusing. So who's a psychiatrist? A psychiatrist is a professional, is a doctor who has an MBBS degree and an MD degree in psychiatry. So they're doctors of medicine. Basically, they prescribe medications and mental health related issues. They have the license to prescribe medications. They also diagnose the mental health disorder. Now, who is a clinical psychologist? A clinical psychologist is a professional who, after their masters in psychology, have done a 2-year thorough medical course called clinical psychology, where their role involves therapy, giving behavior therapy, diagnosing the mental health disorder, doing testing and assessments, psychological testing and assessments. Now that brings me to the next mental health professional, counselors. Who are counselors? Counselors are professionals who hold a master's degree in psychology or counseling psychology. They basically take up the non-clinical cases, while the clinical psychologist and the psychiatrist take up the clinical cases. Counselors take up non-clinical cases like relationship issues, career counseling. Counselors take up the non-clinical cases. So whenever you identify that, okay, I need help, these are the mental health professionals you can reach out to. Don't worry about who to reach out first. Whoever you reach out, they will guide you to the appropriate professional if the need be. Yeah. Other than that, if you're not aware, if you don't know any such professional, or you don't have the immediate contact, you can reach out to the EAP providers of your company. These days a lot of company have their EAP providers and mental health providers in their own company, in their own setup. You can reach out to them and they will facilitate you to the right professionals. Now that we have discussed about how to manage your mental health at workplace and how to identify, let us just give a break to these conversation, and let me do something interesting with you. Let's just do an exercise, and that exercise is a relaxation exercise, not of your mind but of your neck. So a lot of times we have observed that when we work for long hours at our workplace, we do get these neck ache, back aches, right? So here is a simple exercise that I'll demonstrate right now for you to understand how you can relax yourself even while you're working. So you see the neck muscles, right? This exercise includes the 360 relaxation of your neck muscles. So how do you do? It's very simple. Place your hand on one of your cheek and push your cheek against your hand. Yeah? So while you're pushing your cheek against your hand, you can do it for 5 times. So you're relaxing this opposite side of your neck muscle. Then place the other hand on your cheek and try to push it. While you're doing this for 5 times, you're relaxing this side of your neck muscles. Now take your hand and push it towards the front, pushing against your palms so that you're relaxing the back muscles of your neck. And now you can place your hand like this and push it against it so that you're relaxing the front muscles of your neck. So like this, it covers the 360 degree of your muscles around your neck. This is something to relax your neck. When it comes to your back, make sure you have a proper working ergonomic chair. Yeah, and a little bit of getting up from your chair and stretching here and there and backwards and moving your shoulders will help you relax your back. It's very important that you do this intermittently in every 1 hour. If you're sitting for 1 hour at a stretch, it's a good idea that you do these exercises so that you're relaxed, you don't feel extreme pain and discomfort in your body, and you can continue to work. Now that we have seen this neck exercise, I'm sure it's not very difficult for you to understand and you will practice it quite often. Let us just understand about what are some of the things that you can do for your peers. I'm sure when you work with people, right? When you work with people around you, and even if you are not facing any mental health issue, you would have seen that, you would have actually seen that your peers are facing certain kind of stress, mental health issue. Now, how do you help them? How do you facilitate your understanding? So I'm sure today when you're watching this, there would be some takeaway that you will take back, right? So how do you help your peers facilitate them with the right help that is needed at that point of time? The most important thing is listen. Listen to them unconditionally. A lot of time when we listen to people, we just offer advice. Yeah, we just offer advice. Make sure that when you're listening to them, you're not offering advice. Advice only when needed, or advice only when asked for. A lot of times there's a saying which says that a lot of time people consult doctors, but what they really need is an audience. So listening can be very healing for the other person. So give them your patient ears. Next, talk to them, encourage them to talk, encourage them to communicate. If they're not comfortable sharing what bothers them, facilitate them to a counselor, to a mental health professional with whom they can talk, from whom they can find a solution to. Yeah? Treat them normally. A lot of times when we see that a person is going through stress, we tend to treat them in a very extraordinary and special way, right? Like every time we see them, how are you? How are you doing? I once did that mistake. Once at my workplace, there was a person who was diagnosed with cancer. And when I got to know that he was diagnosed with cancer, and every day I would see him in my workplace, I would go up to him and tell him, How are you? Are you fine? Things are okay? Don't worry. And to the extent that my intention was being sympathetic, was being, more supportive of the person. But for the person, it was like, do you think that I have cancer? That means I'm handicapped. And one day it happened that he got very frustrated and told me, look, I don't need this. I'm fine. I can do well on my own. And I would come to you if I need help. And that was the point of time when I realized that actually I was overdoing it. I mean, certain people don't, they're not in a position where they can take your sympathy in the right light. And so that day I understood that it's very important that even if they are going through something which is not very common, it's important that in front of everybody, at least, you treat them normally, like any other normal colleague of yours, normal friend of yours, as you would. Yeah. And not bring out your exceptional gestures to make them feel, of course your intention is good, but they may not take it in the right spirit. Yeah. So it's important that you treat them normally. Do not judge them. If you get to know about something, it could be anything. If you have got to know about someone's personal relationships or personal affairs, or let's say something that they would not like to discuss with you, and if you've got to know, please do not judge them. Please do not discuss about this with your colleagues. That is very detrimental for the person who's going through those things. We often don't tend to understand people until unless we are in their own shoes, right? So please do not do this. Offer your support, offer your patient listening, and facilitate them to the right professionals. That's the best thing that you can do for them. Now this brings me to the next section, where we will be talking about what in an organization, as an administrator or as a leader, you can do to help ensure that mental health is taken care of, your employees are satisfied, and mental well-being at workplace is taken care of. Connect. The first thing is connect. Connect before you correct. Often I've seen that when certain advices and suggestions come from people who I connect with, like who have been present for me emotionally where I needed them, when they advise me, I take it in the right spirit. I've often felt this, okay, fine. So I have this thing in my mind that, okay, I'm being suggested this by a person who equally appreciates me for who I am and just not criticizes. But when I see that I get suggestions from people who have never asked me, hi Snigdha, how are you? Or who have never asked me how I've been doing, and suddenly they come up with a criticism, I seem to not accept in the right spirit. And of course, like you all, I'm an ordinary human being, right? So that is where I learned that it's very important to connect to a person before you try to correct them. So it's very important you get along with these normal small talks, and simple talks about the family, how you're doing, is everything fine. These small talks are the ones which actually help you connect. And they say, right, connect over coffee or connect over tea. That's the best way. So that later on, when you correct, when you bring forth something which needs to be done, or something that needs to be addressed, then your criticism, or let's say your feedback, is taken in the right spirit. When I mention about the word feedback, that takes me to next thing. Make sure whenever you're giving feedback, it appears as feedback and not as criticisms. There's a difference between feedback and criticisms. I can give you an example. Like, let's say that you are sitting during the appraisal of one of your employees, yeah, and you know that he's not done well during the quarter, and you have to tell this to the person. So how do you say? You just simply say that, look, let's say, take an example that your employee's name is Hari, yeah. So how do you put it? You begin by telling them their strengths, yeah. So for example, Hari, we have seen that you have been an extremely loyal employee to the company, and you have given us tremendous growth in the past few years. And we are really happy and proud that we have you with us. However, I'm a little concerned, presently we see that your performance has not been the way it used to be earlier. I'm a little, worried, and I'm concerned to understand, is there something that is bothering you? Is there something that I can do about it? Is there something that you would like me to help you with? And by saying this, you make the platform for the person to open up. You're making platform for the person to take your feedback in form of feedback, not as criticism, because the person got inside the mind that, okay, I was, the person genuinely expressed concern and I have been appreciated, and now there is something that I'm not doing up to the mark, probably I can take it up. And then you say these are the things that we were expecting and has not been done, and probably we have high expectations because you have set high expectations, and we know that you're much more capable of doing what you're doing right now. So when you give feedback in this way, rather than criticizing, it is taken in the right spirit and it will give you exactly what you desire out of that person. Now that brings me to the next and very, very important tip that I would like to give, all the leaders, and in fact, all of you are a leader in some or the other way in your lives, right? Either in a team, either in an organization, or at home, you're leader in some or the other way, right? So one important tip that I would like to give you is recognize, give recognitions, appreciate. Trust me, there is an interesting study about this. This study has been actually done on health caregivers, and the study was focusing on employee satisfaction. So when the study was conducted, it was found that out of all the people who showed low on communications, right, who communicated very less at workplace and low on communications, out of all those people, 37% of the people have reported feeling invalidated at workplace. And because they felt invalidated at workplace, their communications gradually deteriorated. So this brought the researchers to the conclusion that giving recognitions, recognizing, communicating is very, very important at workplace, because that what builds the bond between you and your employee and with the organization that no one can break. There is another research which says that money of course is an important criteria, but it comes secondary to recognition. We all work for recognition first, for money second. Just imagine yourself, just take yourself in the shoes and imagine that you have a really, really high paid job. You're being paid like you wouldn't have imagined. Yet you're not being recognized for your work. When you go to your workplace, people don't communicate with you. People don't talk to you. People don't tell you how you're doing. Would you like to be in such a job where you have money but you're not recognized? You're doing something mechanical. You're not given your feedback. Would you like to be in that job? I'm sure most of you would say no. We would want recognition as well, right? So one of the important tip that you can take back today is remember, communicate and recognize your team members, your employees, and everyone in the organization that you're indirectly or directly dealing with. Now this brings me to the number 16. I'm sure you're waiting to understand what number 16 is all about. Now that we have spoken about, how as a leader you can change your workplace environment, how you can identify and help your peers when they are going through certain stress, it's important you also understand what does the number 16 mean. 16. It is $16 trillion, or you can say $16 trillion. This is the estimated economic burden. This study has been made by World Economic Forum, and they have estimated that it will cost us a global economy of $16 trillion if mental health is not taken care of. So imagine what a huge amount. So as a leader, it is also a responsibility to ensure and facilitate mental well-being at workplace. Of course, we have EAP providers in almost more or less in all companies these days, but it's also important that there are awareness programs, there are facilitations, and there are events which are conducted where more and more people are aware about mental health and understand how to take care of their mental health. Now I will come to the end of the session, of course the end of this talk, but after which I will start taking your live questions. But before I come to the end, I want to leave you with 3 important questions that you need to ask at your workplace. First, do I look up to my work every day? Second question, am I feeling secured with my current salary? Third question, am I feeling recognized, appreciated, or respected for my work? And the answer to if any of it is no, then you need to look within. Make changes and amends, be it within you or outside you, but make changes so that the answers to the 3 of the questions become gradually a yes. These are 3 important questions that you need to consider every time when you are at your workplace. Yeah, so with this, we have reached to the end of our session. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and please post your questions here. I'll answer them all. Let me just go to the live questions. All right, the first question that we have, of course, because this is a mental health session, I'll not be mentioning the name of the participants, but I'll just be, mentioning the question and I'll answer them. To preserve their, confidentiality, I'll not mention the name of the participants. So the first question is, does vocation really work? Doesn't it distort the idea of getting away from work or relax? If you ask me personally, I would say that yes, vacation works because I have taken vacation. And to be honest, it didn't distract me, but it gave new, because the maximum recognition, to be very honest, that I got at my workplace was during a vacation only. Because it gives you a break from the mundane, it gives you a break from the monotony. Yeah, and you tend to, because of a change of environment, you tend to come up more with creative ideas and creative inputs or skills that you can apply in your current workplace. Yeah, but then if you really have this question in your mind, does vacation really work, I would actually suggest you to do it rather than not doing it. Yeah, it's always a good idea to do something, experience it. If it does not work out for you, that's okay. Do not take vacation going forward, right? But if it is working out for you, take it. Yeah, do it. I mean, you can always get creative with your work, and trust me, work does not necessarily have to be from the desk at your office always. And these days, I think one good thing that the pandemic has brought about is we are actually more flexible to different ideas of work right now, right? So just try it once to see how you individually experience it. But if you ask me, and if you ask that other people that I've spoken to, yes, vacation does really work. Yeah. How to deal with a manager who behaves unpredictably? Should I make a note of any pattern? Of course, it would be emotionally intelligent to make a note of a pattern if you are at all able to make one. But understand, if you see that your manager is behaving unpredictably, it's a good idea to talk to other people in your team. Yeah, is it that you who is feeling that your manager is behaving unpredictably, or it is also the other people in your team also feel the same? If they feel the same, then most likely it is the personality trait of your manager, right? And if you think that other people don't feel it and you are feeling, then that means there is some kind of personal dynamic from your side also which is involved in the process. Yeah, and you need to sit down and identify that before you make a note of your manager's pattern. Yeah, let's say that everyone in the team also feels like, okay, he's unpredictable and he's always been like this. After you speak, you get to know that everyone feels like the way you do. Then it's a good idea to discuss with them, especially the oldest member of the team, how they manage the problems that you're facing. I'm sure they would have also faced, right? How they manage, how they handle. Apart from asking them, it is more important to notice them and notice their pattern when you are when you are working with them and when you see them presenting to your manager or talking to your manager, it's a good idea to notice their actions. That will give you a lot of clues and cues to understand how do you deal with him and what are the things that he appreciates. Of course, a lot of times certain things that we observe and then we forget later. So in that case, it's a good idea to have a diary with you where you note down certain things and understand that we all do. If you ask me, yes, I have encountered difficult people at my workplace. And although I always prayed that I don't, but I did. Yeah. And a lot of times, since I am into the mental health profession and I talk to a lot of people, I see that everyone at some or the other point in their life, they have come across difficult people at workplace, difficult superiors. And to be very honest, if difficult superiors, they don't leave you with an experience or let's say an upgradation in skill, they definitely leave you with some life skills, life experience that you will carry over to your next job or to your next role. Yeah, so do not escape from that, because escaping means you are not learning your lesson, and the lesson may continue in the next role, in the next job. Yeah, so it's a good idea to give you 100% before you actually call it off, I would say. And when you see that despite your 100% you feel like you're calling it off, or despite giving your 100% you feel as if nothing is working out, of course then you need to make amends and seek changes that are essential. Yeah. In a high intensity work situation, how does one maintain the difference between work and personal life and help others do the same? Yes, this is a very important question. So basically this brings me to work-life balance. Yeah. So when I talk about work-life balance, it is very important to understand that we have a very misconception about work-life balance. We think it is all about 50% work and 50% personal life. But that is the myth. Work-life balance means if you have prioritized your personal life today, so let's say that your son was unwell, or your something an emergency from your parents' side and you had to attend your home. So if you have prioritized your personal life today, tomorrow you prioritize your work. So whenever you see that you have prioritized something more, cutting time from the other one, like from your professional or personal life, it's important you compensate for the other one where you have cut off the next day. This is what is actually meant by work-life balance, and it does not mean that in a day personal life. Now, how do you prioritize it? So basically the need of the day, something that needs to be done on an urgent basis. That's how you prioritize. So let's say that you have an important meeting to catch up, but you have plans with your friends. So you know that this meeting cannot get postponed. It has to be, you have to be present for that. So you prioritize your meeting. Because you prioritized your work today, tomorrow, or let's say the following weekend, plan with your friends, compensate for that. Yeah. Let's say that you prioritize taking your spouse to a hospital because she was unwell or he was unwell, right? So today, since there was important work to be done, you compromise on that and you took your spouse to the hospital. Tomorrow prioritize that work. Yeah, so that is how you bring about work-life balance, and understand that the idea of perfect work-life balance does not exist. That is the biggest myth. Yeah, sometimes or the other there will be a tipsy-turvy, right? And you have to see that what you have prioritized first should be not prioritized the next day. Yeah, and the other thing that has not been prioritized should be taken into consideration the next day. Yeah. What are some steps to make sure that one's anxiety with work does not affect their productivity? Yes. So some of the steps that you need to, I think I have covered this also during the talk if you were present, but I'll definitely repeat that for you once again. So some of the steps that one can take to deal with anxiety and make sure that it does not affect your productivity. So let's say, let me give you an example, like you are very anxious before the presentations. Yeah, and when you know that you have prepared yourself well, you have done everything well, but every time the moment of presentation comes, you're like blank, right? So in that case, it is a good idea to rehearse your presentation. Have mirror rehearsals, prepare yourself again and again, make videos of yourself while presentation, stand in front of the mirror and prepare yourself, so that when you are giving the presentation, things come spontaneously out of you. Sometimes you will see that certain meetings come up, impromptu, without any earlier or prior notification, right? In such cases, I'm going to tell you a deep breathing relaxation technique right now, a very brief one. It will help you actually stabilize yourself before you get anxious. There are a lot of breathing relaxation techniques, the expanded ones and the guided ones, which you can definitely, I would recommend you to practice at home twice a day, as we discussed during the session today. But there is a brief one which you can do quickly before an impromptu meeting, and that is where you close your eyes, take in 5 deep breaths. Okay, when I say 5 deep breath, one deep breath is inhale, hold and exhale. Inhale for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds and exhale for 3 seconds. Let your eyes remain closed and try entrance of your nostrils to the area of your nose from where the breath is entering and the breath is leaving. And by keeping your eyes focused, focus on the cyclic flow of your breath, the normal and the natural flow of your breath, and do not focus on the thoughts that are coming to your mind. Do not focus on the disturbing, anxious thoughts that are coming to your mind. If you practice this technique for 2 to 3 minutes or even 3 to 5 minutes before you have your meetings or your presentations, you will see that immediately you'll relax, you'll calm down, and you will feel like you're in a better state to present or to talk or to deliver your best at work. Let's say something happened at work, like someone, your boss or your superior shouted at you, or you were humiliated in front of you felt humiliated in front of certain people and all, and that has kept you very disturbed, and you're not able to focus on your work for the following day. It's a good idea to excuse yourself, from that situation. Go to the washroom, or if you have another room to go there, sit down and practice the relaxation technique for 3 to 5 minutes, where you'll see that the anxiety that is piling up within you will bring you down. Now, when you ask me about dealing with stress at workplace, one important thing comes to my mind. That is the lifestyle modification techniques that we discussed, right? Sleep, diet, and exercise. Exercise. It is very important that every day you engage in a minimum of 40 minutes of exercise, or 7,000 to 8,000 steps in a day. Because when you exercise, you're releasing endorphins, the natural chemicals that take care of your mood, right? It makes you feel, lively. It makes you feel enthusiastic, right? So make sure that you regularly exercise. Any person who regularly exercise will find workplace stress much more dealable as compared to someone who does not regularly exercise. So please take care of your food, take care of your sleep. Sleep is extremely important. If you don't sleep well, you will be irritable, you will be anxious the next day. So sleep, diet and exercise are important, so that you are better able to deal with workplace stress. Let me tell you, workplace stress is not just today's issue. While I was doing research before this presentation today on workplace stress related articles, I figured out that workplace stress has actually existed 20 decades earlier. There are articles which state about studies of workplace stress 20 decades earlier. So that means it has already existed, it is existing, and it will exist. So we cannot do anything about it. All that we can do is change our perspective towards the stress and change our our inner being and our mental being, so that we are better able to deal with stress and not let that take a toll on our mental health. The next question is how to open up about your mental health issues at workplace, like anxiety or panic attacks. To be very honest, there is a lot of stigma attached to mental health related issues. Yeah, And when it comes to opening up to someone at workplace, we do feel like, what if they come to know about this? What if we are considered weak? What if our promotion is held? Or what if we are just my job, I lose my job? So these apprehensions, these questions do come up. Yeah, but please understand that if you're not feeling secure about opening up or talking about your mental health issues at workplace, so let's say you don't find anyone around you with whom you can talk or trust completely, then the resources are always available outside, right? Resources are always available outside where you can consult a mental health professional, talk to them, and they will be obviously outside your organization, so you will not even have the fear of the idea is here to open up, to talk to someone, be it to talk and find the right help that is needed at the moment, right? But if at all, let's say that you don't find any resources and you want to talk to people at your workplace about your panic attacks, it's a good idea to talk to the right person. The right person whom you can trust. It could be your manager, it could be one of your colleague, someone who can, when you talk, you can really trust that yes, you will be taken in the right spirit. Yeah, but if you see that it is taking a toll on you and you're not feeling well, it's a good thing to reach out to your HR or to your reporting manager and discuss with them regarding that. I'm sure we all are called humans because we have our humanity within us. No matter how much of a strict, disciplined, or insensitive a person could be, apparently, overtly, in the exterior, but every human has humanity within them. Yeah, and if you're genuinely bringing your problems, I think that being a human, the other human will definitely connect with you. Even despite taking the step, if you see that it is not helping you out, reach out to mental health professionals outside your workplace. How to open up about your mental health issues? Okay, we have addressed this question. How do I make sure not to carry workplace anxiety back home? Yes, it is very, very important. And because if you take your workplace anxiety back home, probably that's going to affect the other areas of your life as well. So it's a good idea that the moment you reach home, yeah, so make sure that you have a scheduled date, okay? Because at your home, it would be your wife, it would be someone elder, maybe your parents, that you would like to talk about your work related issues. If you don't want to talk about your work related issues to them, then that's a separate, completely different scenario. But if you really want to discuss, schedule a time. Make sure that it is not every day. Make sure that it is on weekends when you sit with them and discuss about your problems and discuss about whatever you faced. Yeah, but the moment you reach home, make sure that you distract yourself with everything related to home. Maybe talking to your children, maybe talking to your spouse, maybe helping your spouse in some of the chores, and maybe just relaxing. Yeah, and if you still see that you're finding it difficult to not stop yourself from talking about workplace stress and spoil your mood, remember, the more you talk about negative things, the repetitively you talk about negative things, the more they seem to amplify. And that is the reason I told you to schedule a date, maybe in the weekends, when you can actually talk about your workplace related issue at a particular time with your spouse or parents or friends, whoever. Make sure you don't get into a regular habit of talking. You don't really need to vent out regularly, right? If you really think that you need to vent out regularly, it's a good thing to have a diary or a notepad, e-diary, or like a notepad as we use, like from the traditional times, right? So you can vent out your feelings if you really want to vent out. But the more you are telling another human, the more worrisome energy is what you're adding up. Yeah, so the moment you enter home, make sure that, of course, you're not working. The moment you enter home, you're not working, right? So other things of the home take priority. Distract yourself with watching some cartoon with your child, or watching some movie with your spouse, helping your spouse cook, or talking, having fun, and the next day's worry will be taken care of. If still you find it difficult, then once you enter your home, just just change and get into your comfortable clothings. Practice the relaxation technique by going inside a room where you can practice this for minimum of 10 minutes, and then come out and talk to your family members. So that way you're giving a vent to your distressed feeling, and you are talking to your family members on a more calmer note and a more relaxed note. Yeah. Do you have any tips for individuals who feel very anxious to speak up in larger team meetings? Yes, I think I just addressed this question a little while ago. So the first thing that individuals can, who feel very anxious to speak up in larger teams is a regular practice. Please understand, practice makes someone perfect. Do not speak only when it is a team meeting or it is a presentation. Speak otherwise. Like, for example, speak when you're with your friends. Give a talk. Let's say there is a birthday party for your friend, right? Just so give a beautiful, lovely, expression of your feelings, how you feel about your friend. Comfortable gathering, like in family members. Yeah, there's some gathering with your family members. Tell them how you feel. Yeah, and if you think you're not very comfortable doing these things, then what you can do, pick out some a routine time daily, maybe some 15 to 20 minutes daily, where you sit with yourself, put your phone's camera on and record your own videos where you're talking about either something related to your workplace or about anything random that interests you. Yeah, so get into a spontaneous practice of recording your own videos and then storing them in a particular folder, in the hierarchy. You will see over a period of time your videos will start reflecting a lot of improvement. You will appear more and more confident in each and every video that you make. Yeah, go on the social media. If you are on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, it's a good idea to go live and talk to people, or let's say it's a good idea to talk to strangers. A lot of time, I've seen that people are very comfortable talking to strangers because the strangers don't seem to know them, right? And you're not afraid that even if you make a mistake, you know that the person, you will not come back to the person again. Yeah, so your practice of talking should not only be subjected to your office or your workplace and work related, but otherwise also you need to generalize the habit of talking and speaking up in larger meetings in other areas of your life, so that that generalization can reflect onto your workplace also. And please trust me that making videos is an excellent way of managing your anxiety and speaking more confidently before each and every meeting, because that makes you perfect. And you yourself see when you make a video, why I'm asking you to make a video, so that you can compare your performance few weeks back to your current performance, and you will see that there will be a lot of confidence in the way you speak and spontaneity in the way you talk. Other than that, of course, as I said, the relaxation technique needs to be practiced every day, so that you end your day on a calm note and begin your day on a calm note. Yeah, it's very important that you practice the relaxation technique, because as I said and mentioned during the session, that these relaxation technique help generate alpha waves in our brain. Alpha waves help you be calm. Alpha waves help you relax, put your anger down, put your anxiety down. So it's very important. We are taught about building our body muscles, we should go to gym, nutrition and everything, but nobody teaches us how to build the mind muscles. Imagine it is something which has never stopped. Ever since you were born, it has been thinking. So there needs to be something that will relax your mind muscles and build them, right? So relaxation techniques are very important. Although we are not used to having that in our lifestyle, or commonly see our parents or elders doing that, but I think it's high time we set that example for our children and bring relaxation technique as normally and naturally into our lifestyle as we get food or water into our life, right? Yeah, so any further questions? I'd love to have questions from you. I think we have reached to the end of the questions. Any further questions? All right. So guys, that was Lovely having you all here with me today, and thank you for your patient audience. I'm sure we'll meet again, but make sure that whatever learning you've taken back from this session just doesn't remain intellectually in your head, but also manifests practically in your life and in your work sphere. Yeah? With this, I wish you all happy working and a stress-free workplace. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.